Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of One Vision, the FinTech Fuse. We would like to welcome back our wonderful friend and one that needs no introduction, Efi. Hello and welcome back. And oh my goodness, so much to catch up. Where do we start? How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Theo, for having me back, and it's a wonderful comeback after the summer break,
Oh my,
right?
yes, yes, yes,
Uh,
yes.
so hopefully I can bring some more humanity to the technology world that we dwell in and to the social media world that we dwell in. And that is very distractive and quite, I would say, a lot of negativity, uncertainty, a lot of polarization is in there, which reflects where we are as a society, and technology plays a role. So
Yeah,
it's
it very much so. I think the more we travel and make human connections, the more it becomes real that, wait a minute, we live in such a strange world. And to your point, what we see online very much reflects the polarization, the tension, the stress that we experience in the real world. But hopefully, um, by reconnecting with our communities, we can all go back to what brings us back together, right? And celebrate what brings us back together and hopefully appreciate a little bit more of each other's perspective. It is a crazy world. But when we go there, congratulations. This is so cool. I have my copy. I pre-ordered it from Wiley before it came out. Now I just need to make sure I come see you so I can have it signed. So tell us a little bit more. Congratulations, The Fast Future Blur. I love how the logo is, by the way. Tell us more about the book, the co-authors, and how that whole idea came about.
Yeah, thank you, Theo, for this opportunity. Um, I mean, we are all future gazing, if you like, as much as we can, and it is a blur, clearly. We just have to surrender to that idea effectively. And, the idea came about as I'm part of a platform that is called the Fast Future Executive, and we are 12 thought leaders in different areas that are really shaping our future. And we teach live for professionals on these various topics. I'm focused on the future of money and finance, and there's my colleagues focused in the area of the future of work, the future of mobility, the future of health, and then technologies that are core to the evolution of our future, like artificial intelligence, blockchain, AR, VR, the metaverse, then mobility, and then leadership, agility, people experiences. So this was an idea that was born in the first 6 months that I joined this platform, and I'm proud to say that I feel the godmother of this idea. And I said, why don't we write a book together, but not a book that is, okay, let's see, each write a chapter, we, you know, just put a book together, but really address an issue that is core to our future, which is all about the importance of interconnections between these trends and these technologies. And it's really the idea that I believe is very core, that both the opportunities and the challenges going forward are at these interconnections. And despite the fact that each of us is deep diving in a certain area, and even there it's become difficult because these areas, the boundaries are blurring. I mean, if we think of financial services, when the last decade, if you want, that we are focused in fintech innovation, financial services, the boundaries, the borders have broadened completely, right? They have changed, and we can talk. We would need a series of episodes to talk about how that has happened. Sometimes regulatory driven, sometimes market driven, sometimes it's just the necessity is the mother of invention, and it's happening, and it's unstoppable, right? So that's the core motivation of this book, to look at these interconnections and imagine how they're going to shape our future and provide frameworks for professionals to think through them. And we don't claim that we're covering, obviously, all possible interconnections. That we will leave for ChatGPT to complete all the possible combinations. But we've selected 6, as we are covering 12 topics. And I just give you 2 or 3 examples that are very close to my heart, and they are easy to understand. One intersection is about the regenerative economy and digital platforms. What are the opportunities at that intersection? Because we all by now agree that the platform business model is a successful business model across industries. And then the question becomes, how can that evolve with the principles of the regenerative economy, which goes even beyond the circular economy? And how would that look and reshape digital platforms? And there's opportunities there for many successful existing platforms, whether they are the Western type or the Eastern super app type. They're all, different platform business models, closed, open, with mini apps, without mini apps, and, with different levels of complexity. So how does that evolve? Or another great example is around mobility and the metaverse. The future of mobility is a very important topic, affecting many industry sectors and economies. And how does the metaverse and the technologies like AR, VR change that, and what opportunities are there at that interconnection, and for what types of industries? And third example, and I'll stop there because I'm making it a monologue, is the area that I focused with my co-author, which is really looking. He comes from the agility and strategy area, and I come from financial services, which is really a sector that has been deploying AI uh, for a very long time. It's not new to AI. So we focused on what it really means to think like an AI native business as a new futuristic, if you want, business model, and how can we start thinking about that and help companies move towards that direction. And I'll pause there.
I like it. I can actually sit here and just listen to you for the entire time because I'm taking notes. So I'm still very much old school. But where do I start? Let's see. Let's go back to the point where you were talking about the boundaries blurring and the interconnectedness between all the trends. If we take a look back at, how far back should we go? 15 years, 10, 15 years, right? When FinTech first started, kind of, and we had the smartphones that we all have now, and it became more common for people to carry this little computer around, and then the business models of um, on demand, right, started, the ride hailing, the mobile banking, and all of those. When that started, compare and contrast to your point right now with the platform economy, and I laughed when you talked about East and West and platforms and super apps, because we have such a huge difference in how we define super apps between regions. Looking back at this past decade and a half, what were some of the things that surprised you the most in terms of what we were able to accomplish? And what were the things that disappoint you the most in terms of we really should have closed it, but we have yet to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I would even go further back, and I would say on the positive note,
Okay.
right? I mean, since I come from that world of very proprietary culture and asymmetric information. It was
Mm-hmm.
really based the business, um, especially in what I would call investment banking, capital markets, and so on. But even in uh, just financial services in general, it was really based on that informational asymmetry that existed. Um, and now that's gone. In that sense, we have um, a large degree of democratization. Large degree. It's not fully done, and I'm not sure that there is any need for it to be fully done. But it's definitely, we move from that. The culture is extremely different, and as our friend Paolo Cironi would say, it's no more. It's much less um, a push model than it used to be. And that's thanks to technology. I mean, I remember in the late 90s, early 2000, right when the dot-com boom was there, uh, that the fact that you could have a Bloomberg access in your bedroom versus on a trading floor was a very big disruption, if
Mm-hmm.
you right. And let's not forget where E-Trade or PayPal, when those companies were formed, we're talking about that era. So it's, if I were to say it in fintech terms, it was more the first phase of data, relevant data democratization, or more access to that. And now, over time, I would say that digital financial services started, of course, by e-banking and e-trading and those types of revolutions at the time, right? Because let's not forget, in order to buy a stock, to invest, and so on, it was completely physical. You had to physically go open an account, physically go sign papers, and just we've forgotten all that, right? And I guess, and I want to emphasize this, that the state of private securities or secondaries right now, just because it is a hot topic right now, the secondaries, of all the private fintechs, be it Revolut, Stripe, or whatever, that market, we look at it today and it's opaque, it's paper based mainly, and there's no transparency. But if you think of it, it was like that for many aspects of financial services just 25 years ago. So we've come a long way, I would say, on the journey of data and data driven services or business models. We've come a long way. We can say that we have today a healthy part of financial services, both fintechs and incumbents, that have become data-driven businesses and deliver financial services wherever they deliver them based on, uh, data-driven workflows. So we have to give that credit to this evolution. And then the other um, progress that we've made is this customer centricity that has been borrowed from the rest of the internet companies, right? Financial services have always been lagging the digital, the internet native companies, what we would call, and in our book we make this distinction of what is a digital native uh, company. And I would say that there's more non-financial businesses that were born as digital natives in the past 2 decades, but we have had several um, that have reshaped our industry, even though many of them did not manage to survive as standalone businesses. And the best example of a subsector that didn't really make it are the robo-advisors, the betterment and the wealth fronts of our sectors. Yes, you wouldn't say that was a big success as a subsector, but they have successfully reshaped the whole industry, both incumbents and everybody else, and have moved the industry and are continuing to push it forward. So in that sense, financial services have have become more data driven, become more customer centric on all dimensions. That doesn't mean that we don't have so much more to do. And there's a lot to be done. And here I feel that several of our fintechs that have grown up and are scaled and are either public or pre-IPO, right? Are there decacorns, valued in the 30 billion or whatever, 50, 60, and so on. Are they continuing to innovate? And what does that mean today? Because today we can't be talking about the same things, data-driven customer centricity. So when I think of Revolut, and I don't mean to pick on them, but they are one on the spotlight.
They're easy to get picked on.
And they're easy to get picked up, exactly. And if you look at them, I want to see what are they really innovating on today. And there's a couple of dimensions that I look at. Is their infrastructure innovative, or are they innovating on their infrastructure, like WeBank and those types of banks? And what does it mean today to innovate at that level? And also AI, what are they doing on that front to work, as they are a consumer banking positioned in that sector? How are they thinking about where we're going to be 5-10 years down the road, right? So that's what I'm wondering. I'm not sure that this cohort that today are in the fintech indices, or are in the top, watch the pre-IPO companies, are they going to be the ones that are going to lead into the next evolution, going back to the theme of our chapter of thinking like an AI native business. I mean, for me, Klarna is a good another great example, right? They're out there with their PR about how they are effectively integrating AI and seeing ROI immediately. I mean, I doubt their narrative, but here's the thing. My impression is, uh, I'm not saying that they're lying, but I would bet that they are using AI at a very entry level. And what does an entry level look like? If you look at our model in our chapter about thinking like an AI native business, it's multidimensional. It looks at the areas of the customer, the enterprise, the ecosystem, and then there's 5 dimensions that we've, for the sake of the framework, right, we've identified. And these start with the discovery and go all the way down to areas like dexterity, design, and so on. I bet you that Klarna is just at the discovery level of AI, which is all about, information for clients, right? Through AI, it's all about managing documentation within the enterprise so employees can find,
Mhm.
effectively and so on, and in the ecosystem. And it's like saying that the business has changed because all the contact centers have AI, and because all the management of document and internal resources are with AI, much like JP Morgan, for
Mhm.
example, apparently has deployed such. I mean, do you and I expect that after 12 months of deploying these, JP Morgan is going to see a 73% increase in revenue per employee? I mean,
Yeah, no, I think you brought up a really good point because a couple of months ago, I remember seeing a report, right, that talked about AI deployment, specifically generative AI deployment in financial services, and the areas where most companies are playing in, they are in a very, very low hanging fruit level. Operational improvement in the call center, to your point, going through documents so that they can get summaries faster for humans to review. Those are okay, interesting efficiency improvement, but they don't bring as much business value, right? That can leverage the wider spectrum of what the technology can do. So, yes, okay, it's busy work, but I agree with you. I don't quite know exactly where they come up from that percentage point. And I took issue with when they came out and say, oh, because of this, we need 50% less people compared to before. I find it hard to believe because that's telling me either beforehand they were terribly inefficient and they were probably playing a swivel chair in the call center, or it goes back to how do you even quantify, right? Because that's the status where we find a lot of companies saying, okay, we have done a proof of concept, but we don't quite know exactly how to proceed beyond this because to do that, you need to justify the business case. What is your ROI? What exactly are you planning? And more importantly, what's next? And that what's next question isn't quite there. Recently, we talked to a couple of folks about some of the challenges that we see that could present itself as a hurdle for us to keep moving forward. Regulation is one big piece, right? So in Europe, you guys are way ahead of us. You have the EU AI Act, that bits and pops of it is starting to come into play. We have the White House executive order, but that's more of a guidance, right, than anything. There's still a lot of regulatory uncertainty with respect to what is it that we can do, what we cannot do. And because of that gray area, there have been, quite a few institutions, especially the smaller ones, that say, we're just gonna hold off a little bit, right? Because you're not the JP Morgans of the world, the Citibank of the world that can afford all the resources to go in and just play ball. With that being said, I'm curious to hear from you because you travel everywhere and you talk to people from everywhere. From your vantage point, where do you think this will evolve? Because we are a digital economy, right? Talk about blurring. We have blurred the boundaries of physical borders, but yet we still very much operate in the realm of physical border to make AI work and for us to be able to leverage the full potential of the technology. We need to break it down and we need to bring some sort of framework that everyone can agree on. What's your take on it?
Well, I mean, you mean from a policy
Yeah,
perspective?
or where do you think the next, I don't know, if someone say, Efi, tell us, what do you think
I,
the future of AI will be in the next 15 to
I
18 months?
I think, Theo, actually, we are in a comparable position like when we were questioning what digital was. Was digital to be on the cloud? Is digital to just be online? You launch a business that is only online. What is digital? And it took a long while for us to understand across the board and across all dimensions what digital means. And I love to refer to the example of Amazon, right? That was launched as an online business, right? Selling books in the early 90s, right? And it was only in 2002 that Jeff Bezos came out with this infamous manifesto that's called the Bezos API Manifesto and ordered everybody in the company to create APIs, right? And strictly communicate internally only through APIs, and that these APIs should be externalizable. And if you don't follow, you will be fired, was the signing of the memo. Now that is really understanding what a digitally native company means. And that allowed him later and over time to build the complex ecosystem, platform-based ecosystem that has been built over time, but that was the basis of all this. So we still don't understand what AI means. Uh, you know, and does it mean that you're using AI for your customer service? Does it mean that you're using AI in HR? Does it mean that you're using AI to design products? Does it mean that you're using AI in strategy? Right? So we are starting the same way we were having questions about what it means to be a digitally native business, and it's taken a very long time to shape this understanding that it is in I think the agreement now is that it is a data-driven, customer-centric business that lives and caters to the experience economy. We can say that.
So
And
are we going to have bots talking to each other? We're going to have an Efi agent talking to a Theo agent, and we're just going to sit back and relax.
I don't think so. I don't think
No?
it will sit back and relax. I mean, the dream state would be if you had your agent and I had my agent, and these agents are looking after our interests. and there's no conflicts of interest because they're not representing Square, JP Morgan, or whatever. They are on our behalf looking to where shall I move my deposits? Because no one provider is going to do the research on your behalf to tell you that you're better off there. How do you make those decisions? That's the AI in financial services that we need to move towards. Who's going to launch that? I don't have the answer, but
I was
it's not
hoping you do. Then that way we can just have coffee.
right. Yeah, so will we have companies that create financial products? What will they look like? Will they be more um, decentralized, like those that are manufactured by decentralized finance? Are we going to move towards that? And where does the financial advice come from? Can we have these autonomous agents that are really looking after us? Um, and that's where the value is. And it's not in the margins of the product. These are big questions that are really disruptive compared to what we have today. Because if you think of it, the disruption that we've witnessed today is at the distribution level, not at the manufacturing level of financial services. We consume financial services on our phone through apps, often by non-financial providers, right? Think of the peer-to-peer payment apps and so on, right? So it's different distributions. The manufacturers are the same. There's BlackRock and JP Morgan and all those guys that are manufacturing, right? Um, that the only disruption that we've seen there is DeFi. That's different manufacturing, right? And now maybe the old the old the fintechs and the incumbents that have moved forward, maybe they will rebundle DeFi, or maybe we'll have somebody new. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm still thinking about that point you made about the current generation of the decacons, the unicorns, and will they be the ones that will lead the next
Yeah,
revolution, right? And to your point about the distribution layer, manufacturing layer, you are absolutely on point. It almost feels like going back to what did we set out to do, right? As an industry, we said we wanted to do things differently. We came up with these apps, right? I love your example about the stock purchase investment, the Robinhood, those group of fintechs, wealth techs that have changed the way we think about investment. That was a huge change. But
yeah.
the
I mean,
rest of it,
the,
the rest of it, I don't quite know exactly if we've changed much other than the presentation layer looks different, the UI UX looks different, the logos look different. Right now you have teals and purple color logos, but the fundamentals of how we move money
well,
across
this is the
borders,
manufacturing, Theo, that I'm
right? That
talking.
hasn't changed. Yeah.
That hasn't changed. Accessibility has increased, and costs and convenience, a lot more convenience, right? You have easy, instant payments, foreign exchange rates. You have credit. With respect to credit, we have somewhat uh,
Somewhat. Yeah.
somewhat um,
Somewhat.
improved. If you think of, you remember that period with Lending Club and all that,
Oh,
or
yes.
the
Yes. The
cohort
whole
cabbage and all that
P2P
cohort,
lending. Yes.
right? Right.
Yeah.
That that you know um, never really made a dent
Hmm.
in the way credit is distributed. So, I mean, at the big picture level, capital moves pretty much the same way.
Hmm.
There hasn't been a huge difference
There
in that.
hasn't. And recently I was talking to someone about small business banking, right? That's the other area when it comes to money movement, especially in the US. That really has not changed much. If you try to move money from, let's say, between your personal account to a small business account, it still takes 1 to 3 days. That money still sits there, with the exception of one or two banks at the most that can actually support real time, same day.
Yeah,
Everyone else is still pretty much the way we've always operated. Write a check,
yeah,
wait for it. Or it's dumbfounding. And it's not because of lack of technology. The
yeah,
technology is there, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, in Europe, we don't have that anymore.
I
It's
know.
like, it's become the standard. The instant payments, if you want,
Hmm.
the real-time payments, that's not an issue. But on the front of credit for small businesses and facilitating economic activity in that sense, we haven't made progress, and this now at those levels of re- potentially disrupting what money is, and how it moves. There, we are going to get into geopolitics and politics, because this is the truth of the matter. This is not about the free market. You see it whether it's the regulatory issues with cryptocurrencies. You see it with CBDCs across the world, and you see it with trade agreements between countries, what currencies. These are important economic topics that will affect fintech and financial innovation, right? I mean, look at what's happening. India is trying to export and is exporting its UPI structure. Brazil will follow suit. We have countries that are really um, negotiating with other countries to pay for their bilateral trade in local currencies. So we have these that are very important, underlying, people, consumers, retail are not aware of these changes. What's going on with SWIFT? What's going on with other international payment networks, right? CBDCs or non-CBDCs, all these are extremely important.
They are. I almost feel like, I almost feel like the challenges that we are seeing with our industry is not so much so whether or not we have the tech, we have the process, we have the people who do it, is the bigger picture to your point, the geopolitics, the power play. Because anytime when you disrupt something like that, you are disrupting the fundamentals of how countries interact with each other. You are disrupting the position of where they stand within the world power, lack of
Yeah.
better words.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, right? And those become such huge obstacle that it almost feels insurmountable. So in that sense, what is the future of fintech? And I want to ask this because from two vantage point. One is, are we finally at a crossroad where we're just making incremental changes, but beyond that, we really can't move further to close the gaps that we wanted to do unless there is huge political changes that we're willing to undertake. And second, to a recent episode that you did, which I love, What is fintech? Is that even a relevant term, or should we just call things differently? What should we do?
I mean, clearly it feels like what we call fintech today are these grown-ups, whether they are publicly traded or not. You know, we are all following what New Bank is doing, what Revolut is doing, what Stripe is doing. It's like these companies are fintechs, but they're grown-ups,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they're not the innovators. The innovation is going to they can innovate incrementally, as you said. There's no doubt about that. The only innovation that is going to be disruptive is going to come outside of our industry. And I don't know who's going to do it, but it has to come outside of our industry to move it forward. And it will probably come from, places that you don't expect, because it has to be crazy. It has to be disruptive.
I'm gonna call
Otherwise,
this episode "It Has to Be Crazy."
yeah, yeah. I mean, think of it, right? Bitcoin
Yeah.
is disruptive, right? It's crazy where it came from and what it's done to date. And this is not about saying, neither buy Bitcoin nor whether it is a currency or what's the narrative or whatever. Clearly, much like Mark Zuckerberg, we should credit him for, in his Libra project, for what is going on with CBDCs today, and the fact that 90% of central banks are researching that, whether it's good or bad, but they've moved in that direction, right? That's thanks to Libra, thanks to Bitcoin. This is, we're changing the world.
The
We're
future
changing the
belongs to
world.
the crazy.
Yeah. Do
Yes.
we have the technology? I was talking to somebody the other day, and he made the point, which is so true. We do have the technology today for
Mhm.
every single corporate treasury of any business to run their own bank. We have the technology to do that.
That is a pin
Will it
drop
happen?
moment. No. And that's not because of lack of tech. Um, so, wow, that was a pin drop moment, Efi.
Yeah.
It's so. What can we do? What should we do? So, let me ask you, and we'll close with this one. If, and someone asked me this recently, right? As we are growing up, as the industry is growing up, as new folks come in and bring in big crazy ideas, are we at a point where the only ones that will be able to do it outside of our country because of the state where we are, the digital um, uh, advancements, if you will? It will need to be big entities like the big techs coming from outside of the world and bringing in their changes because they're big enough to impact and affect changes.
Yeah.
And if so, what should the smaller startups do? Because for the longest time, right, we have often looked towards the smaller companies as, you try to do a lot of different things, you are more agile, you are thinking things out of the box differently. But looking at the state of, for example, AI startups in the last 12 months, a lot of the smaller ones simply either cannot survive or they got gutted up by the big companies because it is costly and resource intensive to do a lot of things that we want to do from an innovation perspective. So what would your message be to people who want to change the world?
Well, I think because this phase of disruption or potential disruption has woken up a lot of fears about our society. Where are we going, right, as society? I think the people that are really thinking along those lines and what to do to stop the possible Orwellian or awful scenarios, those will be the people that will come up with wild ideas about how we can deal with this. What is a wild idea? I mean, I think that wild ideas are the ideas that we could really operate on a decentralized network of AI agents. And there are people working on it. Of course, the big question is, can they scale? Can they, because it's the network effects and the standards that are needed for this to become, to have the impact. But that's the direction that I feel we need to be going. That
Right.
all this is creating a push for more sovereignty, more decentralization, and having AI agents like that. And quite frankly, it aligns also with the initial mission of getting rid of digital feudalism that has been created by, the existing Magnificent Seven, if you want, or, the
Mm-hmm.
GAFAs of the world. How to do that, we haven't managed yet, but we are trying in that direction. That's part of the principles of Web3. So what's finance and how AI agents are going to operate in that world, that may include universal basic income, because we are interconnected, and what is the future of work and how finance, adjusts to that. I mean, it's not like utopia anymore to think that our AI agents may have accounts and identities, and they can be um, managing assets or doing transactions or earning on our behalf. This is not science fiction anymore. So that is the world where we're going. And I hope it's more decentralized rather than centralized. And I don't think that the current batch of fintech, top fintechs are going to be the ones that are going to build this. I
I
don't,
agree.
I don't see that.
I agree. So the future belongs to the crazy with a daring idea to bring forward a decentralized world. It is blurry, but it's not science fiction. I love that, Efi.
Yeah.
Before we close,
Yes.
where can we find your book?
Oh, the book, I mean, obviously on all the major platforms, the Amazons and so on, but the easiest is to go to the Fast Future Executive platform, and there you can find all the links to get the book, and you can also listen a bit to our summit that we had in June, and we discussed our book and the frameworks, and yeah, I'm very excited about this. I'm currently very much focused on bringing into a workshop format these ideas of thinking like an AI native business and what that means, because we need to go deeper so people understand how this is just different than, identifying a use case, just doing a POC, and where do the different ones that we hear about in the market, right? We hear about JP Morgan, we hear about, Walmart negotiating contracts. There's all sorts of examples out there, but where do they really fit in this complexity of a business? And how can you broaden that and start really your journey to transform the business model. It's like starting to a digital transformation, right? You start from doing one thing, one project, digitizing a process and so on. But how do you create a roadmap to really transform the business? That's the idea.
Digital transformation 3.0. I
Hey,
can see it coming. All right. Well,
exactly.
thank you so much, my dear. And I'll make sure to put the links to the websites in the show notes as well. Always a pleasure. And I can't wait to see you in person soon.
Me too, Theo. Thank you so much for having me. It
Thank
was
you
a
so
pleasure.
much. And for the rest of our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another special episode of One Vision. We'll talk to you all next week.